At the edge of the abyss, ready to tip over. That is where South Africa finds itself unless urgent action is taken. A warning from no less than the CEO of Anglo American, and is not alone. From load shedding to Transnet's logistics nightmare, leaders of business in South Africa are sounding the alarm. Our guest this morning is South African Forum of Civil Engineering Contractors CEO Wester Mfebe, who says government has failed at every level to create an environment for growth. He's all but accused the president of being economical with the truth when he says that in construction, government's infrastructure rollout is on track, when in fact Mfebe says there is a bloodbath in the sector. These are the difficulties we have to contend with and confront truthfully if we are to make progress. Welcome to our program and thank you for coming in.
Thanks, Bongani, and the listeners.
From the construction sector, it's the second largest employer in the country after agriculture. How much trouble are we in?
We're in big trouble, and that trouble is reflected in the economic performance. If you connect the dots, because if infrastructure is going to lead economic recovery, infrastructure does not build itself. You need contractors to build that. If there's a bloodbath in the construction sector, where 94 companies closed their doors last year, when year on year compulsory liquidations increased by 56% and voluntary liquidation 29%, and overall liquidations last year were at 32%, whilst increased by 32%, whilst the rest of the economic sectors liquidation decreased by 1%. And of course, this followed a long trail of blood. If you look at Stats SA between 2017 and 2020, we lost 118,000 jobs. If then you multiply that by the size of the household of 3.34% as per the Stats SA's household size, you are talking about 294,120 stomachs without knowing where the next meal is going to come from. And it's important to contextualize that the very measure, you don't have to say the president is wrong or who's look at the GDP performance of the country.
I mean, I've mentioned in my introduction load shedding, I've mentioned our logistics nightmare, but as far as construction is concerned, there's a myriad of causes for all of this.
Yes, of course. Chief amongst them is the whole issue of load shedding. Input costs, construction input costs, because we use manufactured goods like steel and cement, for an example, among other things. And of course, this has resulted in a broader impact on the economy, because construction has a higher employment multiplier effect, because the other industries that are supplying the construction industry, such as manufacturing, for an example, are impacted thereby, and it cascades down.
It's this knock-on effect.
Yes.
I was telling the story of being in Umhlanga not too long ago, and I casually mentioned to my companions who were with me how much I was seeing the place sort of look, to me at least as an outsider, to be booming. I was seeing projects, cranes were up. And the people I was with who are from Durban shook their heads and they said, you do not know how many companies have gone under. You do not know how many projects never got off the ground. And one of the things, of course, they mentioned, the president has mentioned the impact of the construction mafia on the sector, on the industry. We talk about it, but how much is being done to deal with it?
Well, there is an attempt. There task teams that were set up as a result of the president's announcement in SONA, but we yet to see results on the ground. We decided on our own to approach and talk to the business forums, to work within the law, and we've been doing very well in KZN. We brought down the level of these incidents significantly.
Just explain to anyone who may not be aware what we are talking about. Explain the threat to projects by these armed gangs who walk in demanding a share of the projects?
Yeah, the threat is great to the lives of workers, for an example, because we often do not talk about workers. We talk about the companies projects, losing income. The workers, and as a result, we lost a lot of skills. In 2019, for an example, about 110 engineering and technical skills left the country because they cannot stand this type of thing. And in certain instances where police are called, they are alleged to have shaken hands with these people and then leave. And of course, I raised that sharply with the police, and they are going to follow up on that, and they are going to be hard on those incidents if they are proven to be correct. The impact of the rollout of infrastructure, must remember the ordinary citizens are the beneficiaries of the intended beneficiaries of the infrastructure. It means they're being robbed of infrastructure. They're being robbed of the economic activity and their participation through employment and through the local enterprises in those incidents. Hence, it has this knockout effect on the economy itself.
Construction mafia, of course, also involves the armed gangs who show up on projects, who intimidate workers, sometimes attack workers because they demand a share or a slice of the profits of projects. That aside, even if we could deal with the construction mafia, even if we might be able to deal with, say, load shedding, you still have to contend with local government and the many, many woeful municipalities.
Yes, of course, that is the weakest link. As I always say, the chain breaks at one point only. That is at its weakest link. And if we can improve the capacity of the state, and in particular at local government level, we can improve a lot of things. For example, the licensing and permitting system takes a long time. And there is no investor, foreign investor, who would be as patient as we are. Domestic investors, they would put their money elsewhere if they have to wait for forever. And what should, in fact, keep the Ramaphosa administration awake at night is the projection by the South African Reserve Bank that the economy this year is likely to grow only by 0.3%. And next year, 2024, 0.7%. That would mean it is even worse than the performance of the apartheid president, P.W. Botha, during whose time the economy grew at 2.2%. It must go back to Mandela days. Under Mandela, 2.7%. The best we've ever had of of GDP growth was under Thabo Mbeki, working with Trevor Manuel, who at least I would vouch that they have the moral authority to query, because at their time the economy grew at 4.2%. So if you look over the term of the current president, what should worry him is that he should not fall even below the apartheid president, F.W. de Klerk at 0.6% and P.W. Botha at 2.2%. The GDP is the a correct measure to look at this thing, because it is basically a yardstick or a barometer against which the country's economic activity is measured, and it is also an indicator of the country's economic health. So you need not go anywhere. You must look at those facts that are presented there.
You've talked about skills exodus, and of course we know once we lose those people, if they find employment and opportunities elsewhere, they don't usually return. Presumably, you've also got the problem of people who look at this sector and think, I'm not going to enter this. So you're not only losing skills that you already have, you are likely not replenishing them as much as you would like.
No, you lose the capacity, because when the rollout of infrastructure, which is very slow, actually picks up, it means the construction industry does not have the capacity to undertake that infrastructure. It means foreign companies using our own people are coming here, could be eating our breakfast under our noses. And that is too scary. And that money goes out of the country, the profits, they get repatriated instead of using our own companies here and make sure that we don't lose the capacity of the construction industry, which has been built over years. In fact, South African engineers are the ones who build massive infrastructure all over the world. They are sought after, but we don't look after them. We're the only country that does not take the construction industry seriously.
I'm listening to you, and I think all of this is known by our leaders. They've heard these things before. They've had engagements with the sector, no doubt. Is it that we're just simply too distracted by what political intrigues and who gets to retain what position? It's extraordinary to me, as you say, that a sector that is so vital to the functioning of this economy, that is so linked to many others, that has a roll-on or knock-on effect on so much of what goes wrong in this country, that we're just watching by. We're standing and watching as all of this is happening. What do you put it to?
Lack of leadership. We need a results-oriented leadership, not a leadership that just talks. We need an environment created in which business can thrive so that the fiscus can receive more taxes. If there's no economic activity, it's a no-brainer. It means that the taxman cannot collect money that goes to the fiscus, which is why we need to deal with the issue of disruptions on sites and the rollout of infrastructure. And also the other problem is that of non-payment or late payment for services rendered, which kills the construction industry. All those things are known. And in fact, the Bretton Woods institutions, including the ratings agencies, they say if South Africa is to recover from its current economic woes, it needs to invest in infrastructure. You don't invest by decree, by declaring that we have so many to invest. It is in the implementation of those infrastructure, including private people who want to invest here. If you cannot get a permit to set up a factory, you pack and go.
Read 'em and weep. West Faber, appreciate your time. Webster, of course, is the South African Forum of Civil Engineering Contractors CEO, once again adding his voice to so many others who are sounding the alarm. At some point, tough decisions are going to have to be made about the future of this economy. At some point, the grown-ups are going to have to take control and provide the leadership we so sorely need. And if those decisions and if those choices are not made, then I shudder to think what the future holds for us.
Current events, developing stories,
tough questions,
your voice making a difference.
This is Breakfast with Bongani Bingwa.